Well, with Donald Trump recently surging in many polls, today I'm going to be discussing the idea, can Trump actually win the popular vote considering Republicans have lost it at this point, I believe, like five straight times. They lost it in 2020, 2016, obviously, both of the Obama years. So, we're seeing Democrats run up crazy high numbers in large population centers like in California and New York. Will they actually be motivated to vote for Biden? And why recent polling suggests that Trump actually could win the popular vote? Now, the first thing I do want to look at is the odds. You can see Trump, in terms of the popular vote, still a heavy underdog, or whatever, Republican ends up running, still a heavy underdog for the popular vote in terms of the betting. Now, when it comes to the presidency and getting the electoral votes, Trump is I would say, decently significant favorite. You could see around a 55% chance, Biden at around 39. That represents a 16-point spread. It certainly wasn't like that 2 or 3 months ago, so it's trending in Trump's direction. This is before all the legal stuff, which I'm sure Democrats are hoping inevitably even this race up, but it's kind of hard to say for sure considering Biden's historically low approval rating. If that doesn't get fixed, it's actually worse than Trump's was when he was president by about 3 or 4 points. If it doesn't get fixed, it's going to be almost impossible for Biden to win the election. At least that's what history tells us. Now, in looking at some of the polls, you can see, first off, the Republican presidential nomination. They've released polls with just Trump and Nikki Haley, the updated polls with DeSantis dropping out, and Trump's up over 80 points now. It's just a complete bloodbath. I continue to see stories, should Nikki Haley stay in the race? Why is she still in the race? It's very obvious why she's in the race. She's the establishment choice, and her only hope is if something happens to Trump. So she's going to stay in the background and just keep collecting delegates, lose to Trump in all these states by about 50 or 60 points. But these are just the recent popular vote numbers in terms of the general election. This is just Biden versus Trump. I am not including any of the other candidates. You talk about RFK, you talk about Jill Stein and Cornel West. If you include all of those, I do think they slightly help Trump even more. Although you could make the argument, depending on how many votes RFK Jr. gets, he may help Biden a little bit. But yeah, these are pretty crazy numbers just in terms of the popular vote. Trump plus 4.3. And you might be saying, well, these are polls. Democrats get, young people. Young people are not going to participate in these ridiculous polls 8-9 months before the election. But unfortunately, based on polling history, you would be just dead wrong. Now, you can take a look at the spread, or first I want to show the actual total final numbers. Democrats won the 2020 presidential election by, in terms of the popular vote, 4.5 points exactly. 4.5 points, around 7 million votes. And then you look at the actual final numbers in Real Clear Politics. Trump overperformed the popular vote polls by almost 3 points. You can see the final average was Biden plus 7.2. And I got to say, I do not remember, not that the popular vote matters, it really doesn't, but I do not remember it being that big of a spread. But he was plus 7.2 in terms of just the average of all the polls combined leading into the election. And then you can see he wins it by 4.5. So pretty much all polling, if you're ever familiar with polls, it has always suggested the polls overvalue Democrats and undervalue conservatives. Although it is kind of an election to election thing we saw during the midterms, it was technically the opposite in a lot of states, with the Republicans being the favorites and losing. But general, especially when it comes to the presidency, 2020, I think we had polls in Wisconsin with Trump down 17 and he lost by 0.3. 2016 was even more pathetic, with the Huffington Post releasing their analytical numbers saying Hillary had a 98.3% chance. And it wasn't just them. It was all of them. Even 538 likes to do a victory lap. They were like, oh, we gave Trump a chance. And they still had Hillary at around 75% chance. The New York Times, little ticker thing, had Hillary as a massive favorite. And obviously we've seen conservatives overperform these things. So I'm not saying Trump is gonna win the popular vote. But based on the recent rhetoric we've seen in this country and the polling, it does suggest that Trump, believe it or not, even though conservatives at this point, I'm not going to say it's impossible for conservatives to win the popular vote. It just depends how many non-political people from major cities come out and vote. That's how the Democrats won Georgia, all the inner city swarm vote. We understand that Georgia, it's a conservative state. How do the liberals win it? Well, they run up massive numbers in extremely small areas, and the surrounding area is all conservative, but it doesn't matter because that little area in Fulton County or DeKalb County has so many people, and they just swarm them to the polls. I think it's going to be very hard for them to do that in 2024. The fear-mongering against Trump, that is the play. It's not Biden's accomplishments. It's, the recent thing we've seen with Trump, the stuff doesn't even make sense. They're saying that Trump is going to try and create some sort of dictatorship, fascist party, if he wins in 2024, and he's never going to leave office in 2028. Of course, he already left office in 2020, so I'm not too sure I understand what's going on there. I mean, I guess you could say, well, he claimed there was voter fraud and things like that. This is what I'll say when it comes to the election in 2024. I really hope, we can actually find a result by 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern time, right around the election night, or like on election night. I guess it would be the next morning. Let's not do this thing where we drag on 5 or 6 days and keep getting, votes and things like that. Every state should count votes like Florida, where the mail-in ballots are already counted. Now, we really shouldn't have mail-in ballots, honestly. Mail-in ballots, and this isn't even like I'm right or I'm left. Other countries have banned mail-in ballots because mail-in ballots are known for massive voter fraud. Rampant voter fraud. Now, you couldn't say that in 2020 because it was in a conspiracy, but there's no conspiracy. That's what other countries have done. It's just the reality of the situation. So we want a fair and even, and really, it's not even about right, left, whatever. Just make it a transparent election. And I think we're going to have a lot more of a transparent election considering 2020, the election came at the worst time for everyone. It was in the heart of the pandemic. You're talking about everything gets shut down in March. The election happens about 6 months later. It's going to be a lot better, I would hope, in 2024. And we would hope a lot less of the mail-in ballots. And certainly that's not me saying anything about 2020. I mean, I don't know what happened in 2020. I'm just saying in general, we would want the most transparency. I mean, think about it. Democrats are the ones that tout they love democracy. Wouldn't you want the most transparent voting process in terms of democracy? You're trying to save democracy, so let's have some transparency. Let's go to the polls. And I know everyone can't go to the polls. If you got an issue, you can definitely do other things like mail-in. The issue is when you got like healthy 30-year-old Democrats mailing it in. It's just ridiculous. So either way, I do think Trump can win the popular vote, but still, he's a big underdog. Let's be honest. If you look at the betting, when you're plus 400, plus 450, even though Trump technically, right now, you could argue, should be around minus 220 to 240 to win the actual election, the popular vote is completely different, and it's gotten so drastic and so different. We've seen, you could also argue that when you look at states like California and New York, there's been very limited polling, but in the polling we've seen, Biden is not up by 20, he's not up by 18. There's a few New York polls that have Biden up 9. And if Biden actually wins New York by only 9, that's obviously it's not going to matter in terms of the Electoral College. He gets all, the votes, but it would potentially matter in terms of the popular vote. And the popular vote, it really doesn't matter. It's just an interesting theory. Trump can easily lose the popular vote. A lot of people don't understand how U.S. elections work. When you talk about Biden winning by 7 million votes, it's completely inconsequential. Biden really won by about 40,000 votes in the major swing states like Georgia, like Wisconsin, like Pennsylvania, like Arizona. If you flip those 4 states, I believe those were the 4, Trump would have won the election. And all of those states combined were decided by an extremely small percent, all right around or under 1 percentage point. So right now, and look, we're still so far away from the election. You're going to get stuff coming out about Trump. We've already seen the polls. If Trump gets a charge, would you still vote for him? And then everyone says, no, they'd vote for Biden. It swings. That's what they're hoping at this point. And then for the Democrats, I mean, people say, well, they're not going to run Biden. It's a little bit late for that, you would think. I mean, I guess, we have seen a recent surge. I wouldn't even call it a surge, but we've seen more people betting on Michelle Obama to possibly be the Democratic nominee. I don't know if these people know anything, if they're just speculating based on Biden's horrible approval rating. But yes, I would agree. It really cannot be Gavin Newsom based on the political look, the idea of jumping Gavin Newsom over Kamala Harris. I will say, dudes, does anyone else remember the theory of Gavin Newsom taking over for Joe Biden? I forget exactly what would have happened, but there was this theory that people were saying, like Joe Biden would have a stroke when he was speaking and Gavin Newsom would come up and save him. And that's the only way. I mean, how else are you going to get Gavin Newsom to jump Kamala Harris? It completely goes against everything the Democrats stand for in 2024. That's why I think if they're going to jump Kamala Harris, it has to be with a minority female because they're so obsessed with stuff like that. But yeah, this is some interesting stuff we'll have to continue to follow, and then you can take a look at some of this is another graph to look at in terms of their approval ratings right now. Believe it or not, Trump and Obama had the exact same approval rating prior to their election, 43% each of them. Biden's down at 37%, and then you can see, did they win their second term? Biden, it's just, you can't even compare him to the others. He's so much lower. Even you look at Obama and Trump, and I do think a lot of the reason Obama and Trump's approval rating is that low is due to social media. Let's just call it what it is. If Trump was president in the 1960s, his approval rating would be a lot higher. It's just the reality, and so would Biden's. I'm not saying Biden's wouldn't. Like, this is just social media. People are ravenous, they're getting more and more information, and they form tribes, and it's easier to do it with social media. And no matter what Biden sucks, no matter what Trump sucks, people are a lot less open-minded. They're alienated nowadays with the evolution of social media, so that's also why they're lower. But I mean, Biden, it's just horrifically bad. Either way, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.